Well, hello everyone. Welcome to It's a Brain Thing. This is the start of the anxiety disorders section. I think it's going to be at least 2 sessions on anxiety disorders. There's quite a few of these, and there's a lot of interest in them. So we'll do the best we can today. Today I was going to try to talk about panic disorder and another one called generalized anxiety disorder. These two are fairly common. So panic disorder is the first one. Now, as part of this, and a lot of times when I give these talks, I try to give you guys some examples or some idea of the pathways in the brain that are involved, and maybe even to have you think about some parts of your brain that we all sort of take for granted. We don't really think about these things, but they occur. And with anxiety disorders, it's pretty well sorted out as to what causes or what part of the brain is involved in these things. So the first thing I think we should do is talk about what is anxiety, right? The easy way to think about anxiety, at least for me, is I think of it as fear. All of us have experienced fear before. Even animals experience fear. And does anybody know why we have fear? What's the purpose of fear? Does anybody know? Anybody ever think about that before? There's a purpose for it. Just like pain, right? We all sort of hate pain. But there's a purpose for pain, right? It doesn't feel very good. Pain hurts, right? So when you have pain, you pay attention. It means there's something wrong with your body. Your organism basically is telling you, hey, pay attention because something is wrong. I sort of think of anxiety or fear as kind of the emotional equivalent of pain. Not that pain isn't emotional as well, but you know, that's the way I think of it. So fear forces us to pay attention to something. Now, what do we usually have to pay attention to? Why do we care? Let's go way back for a little while. When we were sort of hunters and gatherers running around and doing our hunting and gathering and all this, if we came face to face with a hungry lion, what do you suppose would have happened? I mean, we all would have a fear reaction, right? Now, let's say, for example, you didn't have a fear reaction, right? Say human beings just came through to see this hungry lion. I don't care about this. Who cares? Human beings would have been extinct, right? We've been gone a long time ago. We've been all eaten by the lions or some other type of beast, and we wouldn't have survived, right? Think about even mice, for example. Mice have to have some type of fear too, right? If a hawk's flying over and that mouse doesn't dart right away for its hole or wherever it lives, it's going to be extinct too. The mice are going to die. So most animals have some type of fear response to some type of threat, okay? So that's the first thing you got to think about or realize is that these disorders deal with or affect a part of the brain that is a normal part of the brain. What happens is that sometimes, like with this one, you get this fear reaction when there's no hungry lion standing in front of you. Okay, that's a little challenging because when there's a lion, you sort of feel, you kind of expect to get shaky and your heart to race and all the things that happen when you have a fear reaction. But when there's nothing in front of you, when there's nothing you can identify or point a finger at that's making you feel that way, it's kind of scary. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a second. But so think of fear as the emotional equivalent of pain. It serves a purpose. Now, let's talk about there's a couple different parts of the brain I want you to think about. First of all, do you think your brain has a lot of time to sort of stop and think about what your options are when there's a lion standing in front of you ready to eat you? Right? If you stand there and think, geez, now I could run over here and grab a stick and try to make a spear. I could run from this thing as fast as I could. By the time you think these thoughts, you're done, right? You're lunch for a lion, okay? So there has to be a part of your brain that sort of just reacts instinctually, okay? Just kind of, it's a reflex. We call it the fight or flight reflex. And it has to kick off immediately. There has to be a lot of immediate things that happen in the body for you to be able to fight or run away, the fight or flight reflex, to fight or run away from this threat, the lion or whatever it is. If it wasn't instantaneous, like I say, we would have died. But on the other hand, there are also, we all know that we have other parts of our brain that do allow us to sit and think a little bit about threats, okay? So when we start talking a little bit about the treatment for these things, this is the part of the brain that we can use to sort of kind of squelch or to try to control a little bit the reflex or the part of the brain that kicks off instantaneously. If we can think through that a little bit, sometimes that reflex is not as bad as it would be otherwise. So some of the tricks that people learn in psychotherapy, that's how they do it. You use the upper parts of your brain to do that. this other part of the brain that I'm talking about, where that allows you to think, also allows you to remember. Okay, so if you went through, if we were as human beings, we saw this hungry lion, and we had this fear reaction. Okay, but then we forgot it. The next time we saw a lion, we wouldn't have learned from our experience of how did we get away from this thing, right? Or how did we survive it? So this other part of the brain allows you it sort of teaches us or allows us to remember how did we deal with this threat, and did it work or did it not work? In the case of the lion, if it didn't work, you're probably not around. But if it did work, this is sort of natural selection, I guess, right? If it was the people that could figure out how to handle this threat survived, and the ones that didn't. So think about those parts of the brain a little bit, and in your day-to-day lives, these things kick in. Another example besides the lion, a modern-day example of this fear reaction would be is if anybody's ever almost hit somebody with their car or hit another car, almost had a car wreck, Have you ever slammed the brakes on and came 2 inches away from hitting somebody? How do you feel after that? Your heart's racing, it's beating out of your chest, you're shaky, right? Maybe you have some dry mouth, you just, the adrenaline is flowing, right? That's exactly what's happening. It's the same part of the brain that just kicks off, okay? So I guess the first thing is, let's talk about what is a panic attack. I sort of alluded to that a little bit, but what is a panic attack? It's basically that fear reaction that I just talked about. Okay, so it's a sudden, intense fear, usually, that peaks within 10 minutes and is gone within a half an hour. It's a kind of a brief thing, but it's intense, very intense. And what happens with it is there's this release of adrenaline in your system. Adrenaline are chemicals in your body, literally, you guys have heard of adrenaline, right? There's other technical names for them, but I won't bore you with those details. But adrenaline kicks in, and adrenaline has this certain purpose to do things to your body to make it gear up so it can fight or run away from this threat, and I'll go into that in a second. So panic attack is this sudden, intense fear. It peaks within 10 minutes. Usually it's gone within a half an hour, and this can vary a little bit. But usually people don't have a full panic attack that lasts for 4 hours or something. They'll go up and they'll come down, and they'll go up and go down. Maybe they have a state of anxiety that lasts for a long time, but it's not the same as a panic attack. With these panic attacks, there have to be 4 or more physical symptoms, or of these following symptoms that I'm going to mention here, that occur for it to be a panic attack. If it's less than 4, it's called like a limited symptom panic attack. And the only reason that matters is because most people with panic disorder have a little of both. They have some full-blown panic attacks and some less severe limited symptoms. The physical symptoms, the ones that you have to have 4 or more of, are things like your heart racing or beating really fast, and your heart pounding out of your chest. That's the first one. So to do with the heart, okay? And it also, when I list these things, you guys think for a second, try to think for a second, why is your body doing that? There's a reason for all these things, okay? And I'll go into most of them in a minute. But think through it for a second. Why would your heart race? Why would it feel like it's beating harder? The second one is sweating. Okay, we start to sweat when we have, and again, these things are almost instantaneous. They happen really fast. Shakiness, that's another one. The fourth one, shortness of breath, or it doesn't have to be shortness of breath. It can be like a feeling of smothering or a feeling of choking, something like that. So shortness of breath is number 4. Number 5 is feeling of choking. Number 6 is chest pain, and that can be, it really can mimic a heart attack. That's what a lot of times happens, is that folks will have one of these things and they'll end up in the emergency room because they swear to God they're having a heart attack. It feels exactly the same. The 7th thing is nausea or belly pain. Some people in severe instances might vomit. I don't know if you've ever heard of anybody vomiting when they had a really severe fear of some type. The next one is dizziness or lightheadedness. The next one is, these are kind of fancy, but derealization and depersonalization. Has anybody ever heard of those? You might have experienced them before. You may not know what they are. But derealization is kind of like where it seems like everything around you is a movie. Somehow it's not real. It's an interesting thing that your brain does. And the other one, depersonalization, is kind of like when you're outside of your body. Maybe it's like you're up above yourself, watching yourself, go about your business. Those things can happen in different types of disorders as well, but with panic attacks they occur sometimes. The next thing, the physical symptom or other symptom that you have to have one of, is fear of losing control or going crazy.